Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, a bartender meets his future wife at a bar, leading to a blossoming relationship. Despite living in different towns, they maintain a strong long-distance bond. However, his surprise visit reveals his wife's infidelity with her boss. He gathers evidence, confronts her, and divorces her. Her subsequent disownment by her religious parents and ostracism in their town ensues, leaving him emotionally scarred and distrustful of relationships. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I both met at a bar on a Monday morning. I worked as a bartender, and she came in that morning after she had been fired from a place she worked for a short period. I didn't know that spending the rest of the night with her would lead to something more intense between us. Later that night, we went to a concert, then decided to walk around town because I was interested in her. She was an excellent company, and we discussed the random things adults discussed. After walking for an hour, we went our separate ways, but she was kind enough to give me her contact. We talked the next morning, and a few days later, we met at a coffee shop. I had invited her to come to the bar and spend time with me, but she insisted that she wasn't ready to show her face there for the time being, and I respected her decision. We had more dates after our first coffee date, and meeting her frequently created a chemistry between us. I realized I liked her, and I wasn't someone who liked to be around the bush. So I told her I liked her, and she suggested that we take things slow. Weeks after we met, I got a response from one of the dream companies I had applied to and got a job. I was delighted because I had not gotten the job I wanted after being laid off from my former company. The only problem was the job was in a different town, and I would have to travel back to my hometown if I needed to do something important. Eventually, I took the job, and as I traveled, my ex-wife and I were not a thing yet. We were just close friends, and I knew she liked me too. We were taking things slowly, as she suggested, and we spoke to each other every night before bed. I think 2 months after I traveled for work, my ex-wife broke the news that she had gotten a new job, and we were both so happy. Although the pay was not as good as her previous job, it was better than the hourly menial job she did, and she believed she could get promoted fast if she did a great job. Sadly, I could not return to celebrate with her that weekend because I was working overtime, but I promised to make it up to her. Not long after that, she started giving me signals that she wanted a stronger relationship between us, and I was forced to ask her out again, and this time she said yes. When she finally said yes, I returned home to celebrate with her, and we made intense love that night. It was our first time bonding with each other, and I still have bits of the memories in my head. Because of our different work locations, our relationship became a long-distance one. We spoke to each other every day and night, sent pictures, and even got intimate on the phone. I also sent flowers and chocolates to her workplace whenever I wanted to surprise her, and most times, I would send her money to buy whatever she wanted. Aside from being a beautiful soul, one of the reasons I loved my wife was because she was a giver too. My gifting was not one-sided because she would occasionally send gifts to my house, or have something I loved delivered to me at work. While we dated, we didn't have any issues, and I tried as much as possible to travel back to my hometown every weekend, or she would come over. We were very happy, and we loved each other so much. Both our families knew we were dating, and they loved us both. We both got decent pay, and we were able to support our families, even with our long-distance relationship. I didn't really feel her absence because we did video calls all the time, and after 9 months of traveling miles to see each other, I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. Eventually, we married, but I couldn't return to her hometown, and she couldn't come to me either. I was working on getting a transfer since it wasn't possible on her end, but things did not move as fast as I wanted. Sadly, we spent the first year of our marriage traveling back and forth to be with each other, and we jumped on the slightest holiday to spend time with each other. After the first year of not getting a positive response from the organization I worked for, My ex-wife and I lost hope of getting the transfer. I even started sending my application to companies that needed my skills in her hometown, and I was hoping something would pop up for me. 2 months later, something popped up, but it wasn't in my hometown. The organization I worked for approved my transfer, and I was getting a raise. When I got the news at first, I was so happy, and I wanted to tell my wife about it, but on second thought, I wanted to see how she would react when she saw me. So I kept it to myself. After everything was settled at my organization, I left on a Thursday. My intention was to go to my wife's office and surprise her in person, which I did. On getting to her place of work, I drove to the parking lot, stepped out of my car, and was about to call her when no one was there. There weren't a lot of cars parked in that area of the parking lot, so it was easy to see my wife's car. As funny as it sounds, I ended up being the surprised one because I saw my wife and her boss in the front seat making out with each other. I knew it was terrible when my legs felt numb and I could no longer move. My heart almost stopped beating and I was devastated. Seeing that destroyed every bit of happiness and excitement in me, and I could not believe she was cheating on me after all the promises we made to each other. For once, I never thought of cheating on my wife or being with another woman. I won't say I was not tempted, I was, but I couldn't give in to the temptation because of how much I loved her. Without overthinking, I made a video, took pictures of my wife and her boss, and drove out of the parking lot. I returned to our house, the one I rented after we got married, and she was so happy when she returned home to see me. She even asked why I didn't tell her I was coming home on a weekday, so she could cook me something special. I played along, but deep down, I was hurting, and the way I looked at her changed after what I saw. We didn't even get intimate that night because I claimed I was tired and needed to rest. I gave her the same excuse the following day, and immediately she left for work. I sent the pictures and video I had taken the previous day to her HR. Later that day, she called me in a panic, and she said she had been fired and didn't know why she lied. I acted concerned and asked her to come home immediately. When she did, I broke the news and told her someone had informed me that she was cheating and I had proof. Her boss was also fired, but she didn't mention it because she knew it was a lie. Confirm what I had said. She didn't think I was serious until I told her I was divorcing her. Instead of owning up to her mistake, she started calling me names and saying I believed what others said about her instead of believing her. She even claimed someone who hated her must have framed her, and she could prove that. I told her I was sorry and kicked her out of the house. She made a scene outside but left after standing there for hours. It made me happy to see her in such a miserable state, but I was still hurt to find out she was having an affair with her boss, and only God knew how long that had been going on. We eventually divorced, and I even sent her parents the photos and videos I made that day. Her parents were very religious people, and they could not stand the sight of what they had seen. They disowned her after the photos and videos came from an anonymous account, which was me. Eventually, I divorced my wife, and the rumor of our short-term marriage and her infidelity with her boss spread like a wildfire within our town. Even worse, she was blacklisted and could not get a job in any organization within her town. She tried numerous times to get employed but got nothing. Somehow it dawned on her that she needed to change location to get a job, but because of her financial situation, she could not afford to leave town because everyone shunned her, including some of her friends. The last time someone talked about her, I heard she was planning to go back to college for a change in profession, but I don't know how true it is, and I don't care. Because of her, I have found it difficult to fall in love with any woman I meet because I think they will all break my trust and cheat on me like my wife did. Today's second story. In this story, Opie recalls his marriage of 12 years, supporting his wife through trauma and transformation. She unexpectedly got arrested for revenge against her ex's partner, revealing she was still involved with him. He was devastated and learned of her betrayal and public scandal, ending in separation and community ostracism. Now let's get into the story. I remember my wife and I had a good relationship. We got married when she was 38 and I was 34. She divorced from her husband after the unexpected loss of their teenage son. I had never been married, but I was there for her, providing her a listening ear, a shoulder to cry on, and advice when I had it. My younger brother passed away, so I was very familiar with loss and how all you can really do is keep carrying on in honor of the loved one. I know my wife found strength, hope, and courage by watching, listening, and talking to me. I saw her physically change from an overweight, withered flower to a fit and glowing woman. We were married for 10 years, together for 12. I know it sounds like a long time, but it seems incredibly short when I say it. I didn't think I'd ever put a final number of years on our marriage. I worked in construction, building houses, and after I received my inheritance from my father, I designed and built my own. When it was done, my boss was so impressed with my architectural skills that he promoted me to that position. It was an incredible pay increase. This all happened before I met and married my wife, electing to share my wealth and good fortune with her. I thought that if anyone deserved a happy ending, it was her. 3 years into our marriage, she started a health, wellness, and healing video blog that changed the lives of people. She looked up to her as an example of what they could become after a very traumatic life event. My wife had all the trust and privacy a woman could ask for. I never worried about her going behind my back, and I never asked to check her phone or accounts. She was never on her phone around me, but I did notice that whenever I came into her room and saw her on her phone, she'd lock it and put it down right away. I figured she did this out of respect for me, so I didn't feel ignored. She knew that I hated how people nowadays have their phone in their face at all times. With the phone down, she'd warmly smile at me and either listen to me or start a conversation. One day I was working in my office when I noticed I had 2 missed calls from the police department. Worried, I called them back, and an officer told me that my wife was under arrest. I asked what the heck happened, and all she could say was that my wife was being charged with criminal mischief and destruction of property. My mind was spinning. I asked if she had the right woman, and she said they were certain they caught her on the property of the person that called. I realized I needed to speak to my wife right away, but the only place that allowed me to do that was in an interview room. Sitting face to face in a white room with cameras rolling, backed my wife into a corner. She had to tell me the truth, no matter how unbelievable it was. It looked like she was wearing a mask because I'd never seen her face so defeated and flat before. After a few minutes of awkward silence, she told me she got revenge on a woman that stole her ex-husband, Stan, for her. Right away I asked why she felt like she needed to get revenge now, after so many years. She looked away and started rubbing her arms like she was cold. She said she didn't know, and she wouldn't tell me anything else. She actually requested to go back to her cell. I couldn't believe it. Everything was moving in slow motion as my wife was escorted back to her cell, and I wandered into the lobby of the police station, wondering what to do next. Before I could leave, a woman came rushing into the station, furious. When she spotted my wife, she started screaming insults and curse words at her for what she did to her house. The police surrounded both of them and tried to calm them down to prevent things from escalating. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. After the woman, Bethany, calmed down, she took a seat on a bench, waiting for something. I took a seat a few feet away until I felt it was safe to tell her I was my wife's husband. She scoffed and said I married a little girl. I asked her if she could tell me what was going on, because my wife refused to say. It turns out my wife was getting revenge now, because she was still sleeping with her ex-husband, Stan. Since I was looking at her like she was crazy, Bethany explained that she was Stan's girlfriend for many years, comforting him over the loss of his son, even before my wife and Stan got divorced. Without Bethany knowing, my wife started sleeping with Stan again 2 years prior. Missing their son made her reach out to him, and the rest is history. I was trying to hide the fact that I was falling apart. I had no idea my wife was still talking to her ex, let alone sleeping with him. I had been played like a fiddle. To keep myself from crying, I asked Bethany what my wife did to her house. She said she spray painted on the front of it and broke 3 windows. This made her start crying hard, expressing how embarrassed she was and that she felt like the laughing stock of the neighborhood. I apologized to her, but she only solved that neither of us knew our spouse was cheating on us any chance they got. She gave me an awkward hug, but I think we both needed it. So after more than a decade together, I found out my wife is sleeping with her ex again. And I couldn't forget I was in a police station because of my wife's unexpected jealousy and rage. She had a bond set, but I didn't try to pay it. She was sentenced to a very large fine, and she had to pay Bethany for the damages she caused. Everyone in town heard about what happened, and she instantly got shunned by the community.